Hey guys, it's Ed. I feel like it's about time to do another video, and this is going to be another ramble as usual. I'll be going over a couple of topics and ideas that I wanted to share with you guys. Um, I think first of all, I want to talk a little bit about campaign building. I've been watching a lot of YouTubes lately, or listening to them while I'm painting minis, or I'm working on maps for people, or writing, or doing other projects. Like I kind of have gotten into the habit of always having somebody's podcast or streaming content in the background, and usually it has to do with RPG game reviews or board game reviews, or people playing D&D or something like that. Um, and what I've noticed is that there's more and more of a trend towards finding ways to really streamline the dungeon mastering side of things, and in an attempt to make play flow faster, and more easily, and to cut way down on game preparation and that sort of thing. And that is all great. Um, I think what that sets up, though, is sort of a crossroads that a creative type comes to who's involved in RPG gaming, where they have to decide for themselves whether their focus is going to be on the social aspect of the hobby, which is awesome, being at the game session with their friends and dungeon mastering with their friends, and sort of moving from game session to game session to game session, so that that is the focus, versus world building and world design, and all of that has to do with that other end of things. And it's not that these two things can't possibly cooperate or meet. It's just that if your goal is to run a game which is basically just the next session, where you only are planning on the 3 to 6 encounters that are going to make up your next session, and making those quick and exciting for your players, you're never really going to visit the broader scope, or you're going to spend a lot less time on the broader scope of your world, and what's in it. And I think that's interesting, but it's not really the direction that I want to go. I have a lot of fun on writing up the world itself. I love cartography, so I love making maps of the cities and the villages, the different dungeons and the dungeon levels. And for many years, that has been easily as fun a part of the hobby for me as physically being with my players, and being social and actually dungeon mastering that world for them. In fact, over the last several years, I've learned that I need to take breaks from dungeon mastering if I want to make significant progress on the world design end of things. So if you're a dungeon master and you're just constantly amping up or preparing for the next game session live with your players, your focus and your energy is going to be on the next game session. And especially if you are bouncing around and running games in different game systems, like maybe Tuesday night you do D&D, and Thursday night you do Cthulhu, and Saturday maybe you do board games, but then you also maybe do Gamma World or Traveler. If you're sort of the resident game master bouncing between those systems, you're just kind of like a hamster on a wheel, constantly running to keep up with preparation for what's immediately in front of you, so that your friends and players can have a good time at the next game session. And so I think that's why there's this trend where so many channels out there are recommending ways for you to save time, giving you all kinds of different tools to make your preparation easier and your encounters easier, so that as a dungeon master, maybe you have very little need for doing anything other than maybe just a quick outline and some quick notes, some brainstorming, and then using these tools to run your next game. And then that leaves behind all the other side of making your world, which may or may not even come into the picture. And I think this plays into sort of the trend away from home-built campaigns, which I've seen happening progressively just over the decades that I've been involved in this hobby, towards just running boxed campaign settings or pre-published campaign settings. So, if you're into the fast encounters and trying to dungeon master for multiple groups and that sort of things, and the social aspect is really your focus, there will be some things on this channel that will maybe intrigue you or interest you or be fun to listen to. But this channel is going to be primarily for game masters and dungeon masters who are more interested in world building, world design, map making, fleshing out their setting, and creating the full adventure, even if that means that their players may only skate through a portion of it and then move into another area of the campaign. So what I mean by that is, right now I'm preparing for a West Marches style campaign. And over the course of this last year, the games that I've run, I've used some of those canned settings. Like I ran the Dragon Heist book for my kids and some friends. It took us about 6 months to get through, and that was great fun. But by running Dragon Heist, it meant that I could have very little time that I needed to do for game preparation, because so much of it was already ready for me. And I have a pretty significant amount of experience in running games. So my prep time was very minimal for each game. And that was by design, so that the preparation time I would normally spend over the course of the week, or my hobby time I would normally spend on that sort of thing, is completely devoted to building the North for this upcoming West Marches game. So I've been dumping all of what would normally be my prep time for games into just one thing. I'm not bouncing between Cthulhu and science fiction and all those other things. I've focused my energies into just my D&D campaign setting, using the basic expert rules and now old school essentials, which is such a great product, and is the BX rules, just done really, really well. So dumping all my efforts into that, and I've spent a significant amount of my prep time over the last year, really, or maybe even longer than that, working on preparing for this West Marches style game that I've had in mind for a long time. So in that campaign that's coming up in March, I have several dungeons which are completely finished, which are multiple levels. I've got barrows and encounter areas and shops in the town, and a lot of detail already put into that. And the players in that game may place their hands on little points of it, or they may come in and they may explore the upper level of a dungeon or down into another section, but may not go back to that to finish that plot and finish that dungeon until the next season, because I'm going to be running these games in maybe 8 to 10 week seasons. So there are whole large sections of this game that I've been preparing that I doubt will see any daylight for 6 months, probably. And yet I've been working on it, and a lot of it is finished. And I think that the reason I do that is because I have just so much fun, creating the content for my setting and fleshing it out. And that's why I dump additional work into things like creating my own monsters and guilds, and thinking about what things look like, what are the architectural styles for each area, thinking about what the writing might look like. I'm a high school graduate, so I'm nowhere near educated enough to be coming up with my own languages or anything crazy like that. It's not crazy. It's pretty cool, actually. But I can come up with, pretend alphabets and things like that. So I sort of visualize even what the languages look like, or how magic is cast, what spellbook pages look like. And since I have this conflict between legitimate spellcasters and heretics in my game, making up examples of heretic scrolls or heretic spells, and how that all functions, what the stories are behind that, and how they tie into the mythology, and all of that. So this is just kind of a broad ramble about what the channel's really about and who might get the most out of it. If you are a new dungeon master and you're interested in creating your own world, then this will be a good channel for you. It may take some months for me to generate enough content so that people can land here and go, oh, there's tutorials on how to make a world map. There's tutorials on how to make a dungeon map and design a dungeon and dungeon levels and how they interact, and have a dungeon actually have a story and a theme behind it rather than just being a random collection of monsters. How to do city maps in different styles, and I may eventually even go back to showing some tutorials on how to use different mapping software, because I've done quite a bit of work with that, although my main focus and my main love of cartography is all in traditional artwork and hand-drawn material. Let's see. I think that's really all I have to say. I feel like the homebrew, make your own world, flesh it out, enjoy the enjoyment of building all of that, and then being able to put it in front of different players, maybe sometimes at conventions, sometimes with your home group, is possibly a fading part of the hobby, which saddens me a little bit, because I think it's a really rich part that goes all the way back to the very, very beginning. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, when I started into this hobby, there were at first no, and then very few published settings. And even those settings had a very limited amount of material for them. So inevitably, if you were going to Dungeon Master, there was quite a bit of world building just automatically. And over the years, I've watched that kind of start to vanish. So at any rate, thanks for listening to my ramble. I look forward to posting another video or two up this week. And I'll try to keep that pace for the most part, at least one video a week, just depending on my schedule. Thanks for listening, and I hope you guys have a great one.